it's about the educated patient, continuing what we're already discussing, and the need for patient-friendly educational materials and the use of social media, because the way patients are gathering information now is obviously very different than it used to be. And also the question of, since everything is out there on the internet, what happens to patients that are reading information from another country or breakthrough in technology that may not be available for them? And what is that like? Because there was a time where a patient could be more isolated from all this information, but today it's in your face.
I mean, we've touched upon the topic of the needs of patients about clinical trials. I'd like to expand that a bit. What information do patients really need, and what role does the internet play in that? And first of all, of course, information about the disease or after recurrence, about the new form of the disease is very important. But then patients need to know much more about clinical trials, but then also on, let's say, side effects on complementary medicine, which they might take, whether you want it or not, interactions with other medicine they are taking, or even adherence, because we're always expecting that patients are taking their medicines as they are being prescribed. But the reality is this is not the case also in cancer. And I mean, we would wish, and in an ideal world, we would wish that the treating doctor would provide all that information to the patient, so he would actually have no additional informational needs. But the reality is that the healthcare system doesn't really incentivize and reimburse that doctors can spend 1 or 2 hours with the patient clarifying all these issues. That means the patient gets home and he has a lot of needs in terms of education. So there are a lot of unmet needs, and the reality is the information is not available at all, or it's available in the wrong language, because we have a lot of information in English, but if you go to German, which is the second most spoken language in Europe, most of the information, especially the scientific material, even from German doctors, is published in English. So language is an issue. And then the current model of information to patient legislation in Europe still thinks that there's a difference between medical professionals and patients in terms of information access. So there are a couple of barriers that patients can't access it. So where does the internet come in there? I mean, I don't want to propose that everybody should be on the internet, and I know this is not reality. But the internet itself has completely changed the way how patient advocates work, because they have access to the information. It doesn't matter whether a patient advocate in Singapore is reviewing everything that is being published in their disease, which is coming out of the American congresses. Today, patient advocates are connected via the internet. They have access to all that information. And they are taking up the gap of translating information that pharma industry is not allowed to provide, and medical doctors might not be allowed to provide on the internet. So they're taking that up in grassroots initiatives, in online forums, on Facebook web pages, on their own web pages. And I mean, I always hear about the risks of the internet, but we can complain about the internet as much as we like. Google won't go away, and patients will use it. So there needs to be a collaboration of all the professionals with advocacy groups to improve on the quality on the internet, because the worst thing is that information is not available at all on the internet, or it's just provided by someone who has no clue about the disease, but they're not being regulated because they're outside of this highly regulated system. I've become a US citizen quite often as a patient. I've been participating in a number of trials, and I clicked, yes, I'm a US citizen, and then I had access to all the information about drugs and whatever, because it was not provided in Europe. And that is a bit sarcastic and something that has to change over here. I'd actually be interested in your views, because I know that the internet is very controversial and there's a lot of approaches how we could improve the information. But I think we need to work jointly with clinicians, with doctors, with patient groups to improve the education information on the internet and offline. Thank you.
There were two surveys that were conducted as part of the Eurocancercoms project. One was mainly focused on patient organisations and their provision of information, and the other was from the patient perspective. And some of the interesting things that we found from the surveys, I think some of the things that Richard clarified earlier, the type of information that was wanted by patients, but also when we looked at some of the results coming back, the sorts of information that people wanted were covering the whole aspects, from sort of treatment side effects right to counselling, welfare rights information. But as well as that, as well as the raft of information that people wanted, they wanted it in different formats. So we looked at some of the tools that people were using, the way that people were communicating. They were using forums, chats, chat rooms, blogs, etc., to be able to access the information. So the patient organisations tended to be delivering information via websites generally, and that was their main form of getting information out to patients. But patients themselves were actually using a more diverse range of tools to access information. And the sorts of things that they were looking at, what were their preferences, available 24 hours a day. But some of the things that people were highlighting, and Jan was alluding to, was the quality of that information. So one of the things that we looked at from the Eurocancercoms perspective was making sure that information was provided, that you knew who was actually providing the information, who was behind the website, so that transparency of information. Also that perhaps whether it's an accredited form of website, is who's badged it? Is there sort of like a help from the net type badge of a seal of approval, so that when people are actually looking for the internet for information, they can actually say, well, this is a quality site, and this was a key concern to patients, the quality of the information that they were accessing, because there are lots of sites out there, but knowing that the information that they were accessing was of a quality and in different steps of information. It's like different stages, sort of like from brief summary to a little bit more complex to, as Jan said, all the research on the same information that doctors were accessing as well.
It would be timely to take a specific website. The Myeloma Euronet website offers patient information in multiple languages. So Anita Waldman, have you found the response to the information on your website, and how effective has it been, and what have you learned as to what information you need to enhance?
We learned that the patients are very happy that they can get immediately to the trial leader, and they use it. And we get more and more requests from other countries. So for us, it's really surprising that even many requests come now from the States. I mean, they have a lot of information there, but the access to treatment is not so good anymore than it was before. So they are looking for a new possibility to be treated, and the trials, what we are providing on our website, give them a glue.
You mentioned direct access to the investigator. How do European investigators react to patients contacting them directly?
They are happy to help. We don't have any problems. As long as the physicians, the trial leaders, implement the ongoing trials on the website. It's not allowed to do it by the companies.